welcome back to the channel. Today I have a new tutorial for you on how to make your very own Wanderer's hat from the game Genshin Impact. Yee! But before we begin, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the latest cosplay tutorials I have coming for you. So let's begin. And here's the basic tools and materials that you will need for making your own hat. And I'll have links to all of this in the description, as well as you can find my pattern available on my website, tiffanyGordonCosplay.com. Now, let's begin. Now, I'll start off by saying I cut all of my pieces using my Glowforge, which is a laser cutter. But no, you do not need a laser cutter to do any part of this hat. It's just for me, I wanted to make this as a real fast, fun project, and that was the easiest way for me to do it. But you do not need one whatsoever. And for this, all of the red color material is actually 2mm foam, and then the other two types of foam that are gray are going to be your 4 and your 10mm HD foam. And for cutting your foam without a laser cutter, you will need to use either a box cutter or a cutting knife, as well as have a cutting mat underneath your foam, and you'll want to trace each of the parts of the pattern onto that foam in order to cut it out. And I highly recommend, because there are so many layers to this hat, I like to color them with crayons or colored pencils so I know which part is which, or you can trace each part with tracing paper so you know which one goes to what. Now here are all of the parts that I ended up cutting out with my laser cutter. Now there are some that I did cut out using by hand, but these are the main parts. I'll also note that originally I had plans on making the two dingly things on the hat, and after I'd already made them, painted them halfway, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. So those got tossed, so I'm only talking about the main hat. Yee. Okay. Now, stay focused. Back to work. So this part I cut out by hand, and it's this like half circle kind of piece, and you'll cut it out, and then you want to apply contact cement glue to the seams, and once your glue is dry, and then you will attach it, so then you'll have this kind of somewhat large cone-like shape, and then we're going to cap it with another circle on the center part. Again, contact cement glue, wait for it to dry, and attach it. And this is going to be our main base structure for this entire hat. And side note, I used 4mm foam. And as I mentioned earlier, all of the red foam is 2mm foam, and I used 2mm for all of the decorative detail pieces. So this part is actually the underside of the hat, because there's details on both sides, because Genshin Impact likes to be crazy. And so basically, after cutting this whole piece out, I laid it on top of the gray part of the hat, and I traced where I wanted to put this. After that, I applied my contact cement glue to both of the pieces, waited for it to fully dry, and then attached it together. Small little tip, I like to use pins and pencils and stuff so that way it doesn't accidentally attach where it's not supposed to. And that'll complete your bottom side for now. Then you're going to want to push it so that way the right side is facing upward, so the point should now be the gray part. And then we're going to get the top detail piece, again 2mm foam, trace it onto where we want it to lay, and then we're going to apply our contact cement glue, again wait for it to dry, and attach it. I repeated the same process for the next floral piece with 4mm and 2mm. Once that was done, I then traced it onto the top section and attached that. And continued to finish up the other two flower-like shapes, attaching those two pieces together, and then onto the bottom side of the larger one, I ended up kind of rounding it the opposite way. This way it would kind of flower shape upward. Applied contact cement glue in a circle, so not all the way out, and then attached it on top. And you'll get something that looks pretty cool like this. And now onto the trim, and the outer part of our trim, I ended up doing the entire shape out of 4mm, and then on the second inner section of that trim, I did it with 10mm, and we're actually going to be stacking those two pieces together. So I'm applying contact cement glue to those right now, And then once it was dry, I then attached those together. And for even more details on the little pointy-like pieces, I did those out of 4mm HD foam. Now there is one little detail around this trim, and it's in the very center, like a line-like piece. So what I ended up doing is I traced that line with the Sharpie onto the top half, and then with an X-Acto knife, I pierced it halfway down the foam, following that line as a guideline. And then afterwards, I got my heat gun, and then I lightly heated it up, and by doing this process, the foam where you slit it is actually going to expand, and then you'll have this nice channel that you'll be able to see. And here's everything that I've made so far. And side note, let me know in the comments what other Genshin Impact hats or accessories I should make next. Now to clean up some parts, and for this I'm going to be using my Dremel as well as my sanding drum, and I'm going to first start off with the trim, sanding them flat, and then I'm going to give some detail by rounding it out in some places. As well as there's these kind of fish-like shaped pieces that I also rounded out the edges. These I ended up cutting out of 10mm, and these are also parts that we're going to be attaching right now onto our trim. And I did this actually to the underside of our trim where all the points are in the center. And now that our trim is done, it is time to attach it to the main part of our hat. And it is actually gonna be those fish-like pieces that are gonna be aligning onto our hat. So I highly recommend putting it onto the hat first and then tracing where it's going to lay. That way you have a good indication of where you want to apply your contact cement glue to both your foam pieces. Again, wait for it to dry and then you can start attaching it. And the last detail part that we're going to talk about is there's 2 hooks on this hat. And for these, I cut them out of 10mm foam and I stacked them together. So in total, that's 20mm of foam per each of these hook pieces. And then I took them to my sanding bench and I sanded them so they looked pretty flush together. And then the last part was to attach it. And this will be it for detail parts. Now, this is a hat, you probably want to wear that, which was cutting a 2-inch wide strip of 4mm foam, the length that I wanted it to be to go around my head. And to get this measurement, I ended up getting a tape measure and just wrapping my head so I knew how long I wanted it to be. Side note, if you're going to be wearing a wig with this hat, you might want to measure with the wig on, so that way it's not too small. Then apply your glue and attach the ends together so you have this like oval circle-y shape. Then trace roughly where you want it to lay on the inside, apply your glue, and attach it together. Congratulations! You've made yourself your own HD foam hat for Wanderer! And I thought it looked really cool just as gray and red, but those aren't actually the colors of the hat. So, on to how I painted this. And here's everything that I used for painting this hat. Side note, you don't have to airbrush paint, you can also just do this by hand with the same colors. It works great. And speaking of colors, I have my own airbrush paint line thanks to Createx colors, and most of the colors that we're going to be using for this hat are actually in the paint set. So I highly recommend it because it's the best paint for cosplay and props. It's wonderful. I've been using them for a long time. Also, shout out to Iwata who provided all my airbrush equipment so that way I could paint this. So let's go. As always, the first step you're going to want to do to any of your foam is to prime it. And my go-to method is always Plastidip, and Plastidip is a rubber spray paint. You'll want to apply it to both the top part of the hat and the bottom part of the hat. Wait for it to dry at least 45 minutes, and then spray another coat, 45 minutes to dry, and another coat to finish off this hat. Then we can paint. And the paint that we're going to be using for the most part is all of Createx Colors' Wicked Opaque line of paint. And the first color we're going to start off with is their Opaque Jet Black, just covering the whole hat with it. And then once that's dry, it is time for details. And this hat has a rainbow-like detailed dot effect onto certain spots of this hat. So I ended up using the colors fluorescent pink, fluorescent orange, Hansa yellow, fluorescent green, daylight blue, violet, and white. And for this, I just used all these airbrush paints with a paintbrush, and I'm going to be applying dots. So each one of these little flower pieces, flower-like petals, are going to have one main color. So let's say green, and then the one next to it, I'm going to put only 3 dots of green, and then I'll do that one in blue. And then to the left and the right, each one of those will only have 3 dots. So each one of the main flowers has the most of that colors, but then it kind of does a gradient in each of the other sections. And I also did this inside all of our little fish-like heads as well. And I will note that I did have to apply a few layers of this for some of the colors just to make it pop on that black. But once it was dry, it was then time to mask it. And we're going to be using masking tape for that, covering up each of those sections, and then onto the bottom side of the hat. And we're going to be switching over to Laguna Blue, and we're going to be applying that all to the inside part. Once it's dry, we're going to mask off those sections, leaving just the detailed sections exposed. And then we're going to be switching to teal. And then that's going to give us that kind of visual like pop once we take all the tape off. It's going to be really, really good. Trust the process. And then mask, mask, mask. It's going to be a lot of masking tape for this project. Be aware. Now onto the front part, the top part of the hat. And we're going to be using a mixture of daylight blue and Phthalo blue. I can't pronounce that word. I have trouble with it. But those are the 2 colors we're mixing together, and we're going to apply it to the top part of our hat. And actually there is a slight gradient on this hat, and the outer part is slightly darker. So we're going to be doing a mixture of now deep blue and the Phthalo blue that I can't pronounce, but I'll spell it in the closed captions correctly. Yeah, and you're just going to want to get your airbrush gun, and you're going to actually pull it slightly away from the hat. This is gonna make it so you'll have less of a solid thickness of paint splatter onto the surface, and it's going to be a lighter mist spray, causing your eyes to do a natural like gradient visually, as well as the paint. It doesn't have to be wet from the first color, it's just going to do this on its own. Then more masking tape, and we're gonna leave all of the detail parts exposed, and we're gonna switch back to teal for this piece. Now, I actually did an oopsie while airbrush painting this, and I forgot to do black first, so I started doing my gold, and oh, it was terrible going on top of the blue. I was just really tired, and I was like, this is awful! Oh right, I forgot to do my base layer, because airbrush painting is all about layers. So I ended up going back on top with my jet black. Once that was dry, then I could do the correct color, which our next color was going to be gold chrome, and that's gonna give this gold chrome that pop that it needed. Don't put gold on blue, it just doesn't work. Do black underneath. That fixed it. And now you're ready for the grand finale of removing all of that masking tape. And this is always really fun to see all of the layers and pieces start to come together. And once all your tape is done, we have one last step, and that is to seal all of this paint so that way we can protect it from the sun, from those UV rays, as well as to help prevent any of the paint from coming off or anything. And it also leaves an even consistent shine onto the whole piece. And we're going to be using Createx Colors UVLS Satin, and this is going to finish off our hat. And that, guys, was how I made the Wanderer's hat from the game Genshin Impact. and I hope that this helped for you making your very own one, as well as maybe learning some new foam and airbrush painting skills along the way. And if so, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you, as well as let me know what you want to see that I make next. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. A big thank you to all of my company sponsors here on YouTube, as well as those members, specifically those legendary members here on YouTube who help to financially support everything that we do on this channel. And I'll see you for our next video. Much love, guys!